Good evening and welcome everyone. Before begin with the session, I request all the participants to make sure that you are muted throughout the session unless and until you want to ask any question to sir. Without any further ado, it's dot 7:15. Let the participants keep coming in. We will begin with our session. Once again, good evening. On behalf of Nature Walk Charitable Trust Pune, I, Harshada Sunil Abhyankar, on behalf of my entire team, wish you all a very happy International Tiger Day. Today, our organization is really privileged to have with us world-renowned tiger biologist, none other than Dr. Raghu Chunda. Sir has connected to us from Panna today. And sir, we are very obliged to have you here. So I would just take 2 minutes to introduce what Nature Walk is into. And also I would introduce sir. And then today's interview is going to be taken by Mr. Nachiket Utpal. Mr. Nachiket would be interacting with Raghu sir, and at the end of the session, we would be having a question answer session wherein you all can put up your questions and those questions will be addressed by sir. Nature Walk Charitable Trust is a trust which is working in Pune for last 20 years. We have been working in various fields promoting wildlife education and conservation. The only aim is to make citizens, common citizens aware and sensitize them about the need for wildlife conservation. And on the occasion of International Tigers Day, we have Mr. Dr. Raghu Chundawat with us. Sir is a conservation biologist whose main areas of research have been snow leopard and tigers. His pioneering 10-year research on tigers took place in the very famous Indian tiger reserve, Panna Tiger Reserve, and has been documented in the BBC Natural World documentary, Tigers of the Emerald Forest. His book is also very well known, The Rise and Fall of Emerald Tigers. The book describes the fantastic recovery of the Panna's tiger population from 1996 to 2001. And it also presents an insider's account of the politics and administrative apathy plaguing Indian wildlife conservation. He has also worked on various research projects in Madhya Pradesh and in Ranthambore Tiger Reserve on the value of wildlife tourism to conservation and communities. So today we would try to unfold different aspects of tiger conservation, what is its future for India, and why is it so necessary to conserve this apex predator. And also telling a little bit about our very own team member Nachiket. So Nachiket would be interviewing him. Nachiket himself is a very keen wildlifer, originally from an IT background. Nachiket has tried covering various aspects of African wildlife as well as Indian wildlife through his photography. Sir and Nachiket, now the entire Zoom platform is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Harshada. Am I audible?
Thank you, Harshada, and it's a pleasure for me being here. I always wanted to interact with Pune audience because I've never ever done it, and I know a few friends are there. My senior, who I've learned my ecology, biology, and wildlife science from Mr. Savakar, who was in WII and is retired and settled there. And I would like to go and see him also, but at some point I will end up in Pune and we'll be connecting. But it's a pleasure talking to you.
You're welcome, sir. And also I can see a lot of small kids attending the talk and they're really interested in listening to you. So yeah, let's go ahead. Thank you.
I'm very excited myself.
Thank you, Harshada. Thank you for being there, sir. I mean, it's a privilege to be interacting with you. If I recollect, it's the second time that I'll be talking to you. I visited your hotel when I was in Panna, and I had the chance to interact with you and Joanna ma'am at that time. But it's always a pleasure to talk to someone who's been there, done that for decades now. So all of us obviously are huge admirers of your work, sir. And they're not here to listen to me. So without any further delay, I'll just get straight to a few questions. So I think I'll just set up. There are a few questions that, sir, we have sort of an interaction where you would like to hear your views. And then in the end, we'll probably keep some time where we could actually let our participants also, if at all we've missed out on certain questions or certain points that have not been covered, they could probably take that up and ask you those questions. So
And Nachiket, I'm
Yeah.
really sorry to intervene, but I would request the participants to pin on Raghu sir's screen so that they are able to view and hear Raghu sir properly. Thank
Right,
you
thank
so
you.
much.
Thanks,
Yeah,
thanks,
go
Harshada.
ahead.
Yeah. So just kicking off, sir, I think we'll surely get into the first question, which is probably uh, with your sheer amount of work and research that you've put in, the longevity that you've put in into wildlife conservation, and you are probably one of those illustrious names that we probably be like Billy Arjun Singh sir or Ullas Karan sir. You've been studying tigers. You fit into that list, but interestingly, as Harshada also mentioned, you started with snow leopards. So how did that shift, or how did that shift in the focus take place, and was there a reason to do that?
Yes, there was a very definite reason, but it was not necessarily for tiger. The problem when I did my study in snow leopard, to get the data was very, very difficult. So I have to really, and when I radio collar tigers, snow leopard, we couldn't track it on foot because we don't. This time we didn't have satellite calling, GPSs, and things like that. And so I was wanted to work in some areas where I can see animal and and also collect enough information. So I was looking for that. It's not necessarily carnivore, but what happened when I joined after doing my PhD as a faculty in WI. The first job was given to me was assignment to Ranthambore, and that time Ranthambore was going through a crisis. There were hardly any tiger left, and it was a Supreme Court case, and I was monitoring the census there, and I had to submit a report. And I was looking at to give a country-wide perspective what's happening. I found that there is absolutely no basic information was available. If I you go to the ministry. So I went around for 3 months and I couldn't get any information where tigers are, how many tigers we have, where we are, where they are disappearing, where they're doing well. The kind of basic information was missing. It was not available. Even it may be there, but it was all spread out through the country. And then when I somehow managed to put together some information, we realized that the dry forest is the place where tigers are disappearing at a much faster rate. So I thought why they are doing that and why we're losing tigers. The dry forest is the largest tiger habitat in India. So I thought I will go. So I selected Ranthambore because I was there. I went to Tadoba. I went to Melghat. I went to Pench. And then I came to Panna. The reason I selected Panna not because I'm from Madhya Pradesh, but the thing was the terrain was suitable for doing radio tracking. So I could get signals, monitor it, because the idea was to collect information. My focus entirely was on having data so that I can answer this question. So I selected Panna for that reason.
Okay. So it's actually very interesting because many a times when one starts off with a particular subject or a particular animal, especially this, and you spend decades of it. So that's why this question probably came to us that how did the shift from a snow leopard happen to the tiger? But yeah, we are thankful that happened so that we could uncover so many interesting facts out of it. So now, sir, like probably a year ago today itself, the tiger numbers were announced last year by the government of India, and close to 3,000 tigers were declared in our country. So there are quite a lot of jubilant reactions to this, and there is a steep rise in numbers and all, so to say, or that's what is being projected. So we would like to hear your take on it as to, is it really a matter of celebration, or is it something that is underlying within the whatever is lying in front of us? Are there some hidden facts behind it?
I think it's a hidden fact, but it's a matter of perception, and people kind of exploit that situation. And so it was celebrated with Bago Mein Bahar Hai. You remember the headlines. So, but the thing is that it's a thing which we call in science is conservation amnesia. Basically, it's a syndrome of shifting baselines, and these baselines shifts from generation to generations. So what my father saw was a different baseline, and his perception was different for and my will be different, and new generations will be different. In the tiger scenario, what had happened is at the turn of 19th century, we had about 14,000 tigers. And from there, it went down. And when we started our tiger conservation program, we had somewhere around 2,500 tigers. But then we had another drop in numbers. Whether it was actually a drop, we don't know. But the new methodology gave a figure of 1,400 tigers. From there, 3,000 tigers, now people use it as a baseline, then it doubles the number, and that's why the celebration of Baghon Mein Bahar hai. So if you it depends where you stand and see this. So it gives you a different perspective. But if you stand in late 70s, when we started our conservation journey of for tigers, then we realized that how much after almost 48 years now. I think so almost half a century is a long time.
Right.
Amount of money, political will, legislation support being given. Is it worth it? It definitely is worth it, but is it something we should celebrate about? For me, if we would have done, say, 5,000 tigers or 6,000 tigers, I would be really very happy, and myself will be singing that song, that Baghon Mein Bahar hai. But the Project Tiger has been a very successful program. I think the vision was fantastic, what they set aside when they started. I think it's an example. If you look at India, actually, where the success stories are, it's a lot of them are in India. India will be top country in the world where it's happening. But India also is a country where you have a lot of disaster also. So you have both success and disasters, and somehow media, um, uh, you know, favor to disaster stories and negative stories, and haunts the government and things. So, and it goes internationally. So somehow these success stories that get lost. But biggest success for my tiger conservation is not the numbers. Is for me is that we still have tigers in all the habitats it used to be in the past. So we have able to hold on to the tiger geographies. So if you want to expand these, we have the basis available. If you want to make 6,000, you still can do it, and that's the biggest success.
Right. And like you rightly said, sir, I mean, holding on to what we had, I mean, after a half a century of working with, trying to conserve this beautiful animal, we are at least having the fundamentals that could allow us to expand in future in terms of allowing more of these animals to roam around in the forest. But do you think, sir, it's kind of the concentration of these tigers to certain areas right now? Is it like, do you think that only in central India there are a lot of tigers, and then as you move across there are possible habitats, but tigers are not? I mean, if at all you think of something like this. So do you think
even in central India, you're right, absolutely. If I've got it right, that there are, even central India, there are places where we have not done well. The problem, Nichiket, is that in rest of the world, the nature habitat of wild habitats are owned by a range of ownership is there. So individuals, there are communities, there are corporates, there are government land. So they all own, and they have their own interests. They have their own expertise. So they all have their different vision, and they will do conservation if they want to do in their way. So you have different models of conservation operating simultaneously. Whereas in India, all the nature areas are owned by one agency, and so we have one model. If it works fantastically well, and it has done very well. So we have one conservation model, which is protected area network based. We keep set aside a protected area. But the limitation of that model, and it has done wonderfully well. Actually, that's been very successful in India. But what the problem is that it's only 5% of the tiger habitat or nature habitat that is protected. So what happens is that the reach of conservation is not gone beyond these boundaries. And so it's been very successful within the boundary. Outside, say, another 20% of the habitat, we have not able to achieve our conservation goal. And I think we need to review that bit and see how we can extend our conservation reach to these areas.
So, sir, that brings me actually. You partially covered the next question that I was actually about to move to. So we have this certain model that we have in place of managing our protected areas, the tiger reserves that we say, which has this certain amount of a core zone and a buffer zone. So do you see there any difference that is needed or any change that is needed in the current system in terms of especially the buffers that because I remember reading in your book you had certain interesting ideas in terms of managing the parks as well. So in terms of buffer management, do you feel buffer should still be treated as a core zone, or do you feel it should be treated in a different way? The human interference basically is what I'm talking about in the buffer.
Yeah.
Should that be limited or?
Yeah, no, the thing is that there are two aspects of it. One is the protected areas when we created, they are not large enough. So how will they become viable? By adding buffer is not going to solve that problem. There is a terminology, I will not go into detail, where we call ecological trap. The buffer can become a negative force in that sense. So we have to be a little careful. What actually is needed is buffer populations. So if you look at there, if you have a smaller population like Panna tiger, it's not viable on its own. It needs connectivity with the other population. So where is the other population which is connectivity? Is it maybe Bandhavgarh, Kanha? They are quite far. So what we need is a population, neighboring connected population somewhere very close to us. Not necessarily big like Kanha, Bandhavgarh, but maybe small where 10 animals are there, 5 animals are there, but they are connected. But the key is that population is discrete. The demography of these population is discrete. They are not connected in a sense that they become the one demography. If they are losing there, they also lose. They are dying with it. So they are independent. So there will be extinction and recolonization in this area actually makes these dynamics much more robust. And I think that's what is needed. That's what I was suggesting, the satellite population we need to create. And that can be used then for these models where I'm talking about, different models we can work. The idea should be there. We are working in an area where local people are living, sharing the habitat with tigers. So all the benefit of whatever we do, conservation development in this area, the financial benefit must go to the local people.
Right. So rightfully said, sir. I mean, on the similar lines, what we also I would like to probably ask next is in one of your recent talks, I think last year that I was I managed to grab online. You made a very interesting point, sir, where you said that yes, tigers need forests, but it is also important that the forest needs tiger. So it's a both way relationship, and I would probably like to hear a bit from you in terms of this cyclic dependencies. I mean, does this mean that the other animals in the forest are also equally important? Do you think there is a little bit of, I wouldn't say ignorance, but there is a little bit of lack of focus on the other animals? Do you think is that's the case, or do you think it's fine if you take care of the tiger, the forest will take care of itself?
It will. That's also true. The reason I was saying is that basically now after this Bagho Mein Bahar article came, and then there was a few more articles came out, and I felt there is a kind of a lobby which is going on saying that India has enough tigers and there is no space for tigers. And because they are looking at very different perspective, that tiger needs space, and we have provided that space, and it's now full, and that we then now India is done its work, and we can sit on our laurel, and I think that's very dangerous. And also, I was also looking at it in a perspective that for our development, humanity development, or the India, when we talk about development, we only talk of industries, we look at malls, we look at thing. But if you look at our basics, they are missing. We need clean air. Where it will come from? Who will clean our air? Where the clean water will come from? Not forget clean water. Where the water will come from? Where the healthy environment will be. So we need a good balance between industry development and basic development. So these basics should be part of our development, actually, activities planning, that we don't lose areas which provide that clean air, clean environment situation. So in that sense, tiger becomes some seriously important spirit behind it, because it covers almost 90% of the in India. So if you can protect tigers, you can protect all 90% of the India and its ecological integrity, and that's very significant for our well-being. Forget nature will survive. It may change, but it will survive. Planet will survive. We may cut short our journey if we want to extend it, and that far we can't look into. But what we can look into is the next generation. We can provide a healthy environment. That's something we should be looking at.
Correct. So absolutely, sir. I mean, you said it, and I'm actually it's very interesting that the interview is going into a direction where I wanted it to, with the amount of questions and the kind of answers that we are going into.
It's your credit. You can. Some interviewers are good.
No. I mean, that's a compliment, but I won't take it right now. So the next question, sir, is on the similar lines, that what is the exact role of conservation scientists and conservation NGOs? We have a lot of such entities right now in the country. So what is their exact role right now in conservation, and are the policymakers actually hearing them? Are they really heard by the policymakers, or are they reaching up until them, those people, like up to those people?
Well, you have to be very forceful to be heard, and unfortunately, I think it's they usually we are heard. Most of the time, we fail to get an positive hearing. But what happens most of the time is that we we take up fight. It's almost because, say, the Ken Betwa link is coming up, and then Panna's 100 square kilometer to be submerged. When it's all decided, project is made, the money is spent, and that's time we're doing. Or sometimes there's a road going through, and then it started, then we come to know about it. Actually, all this can be sorted out at the planning stage. And so if you're going through an ecological sensitive area, anything you're planning, right from the beginning, I think if they can look into that, then quite a lot of those conflicts can be solved. Time can be saved. Our energy can, because we, as a conservationist, it's very sad because we end up spending a lot of negative energy in fighting these things. Whereas we have the skill and knowledge to be very positively contributing to development of India. And it we would be very happy and satisfying if we would be doing that rather than fighting government on these areas. So if that can happen, that will be fantastic. But if you look at the communities have done very well. The NGO sector in India has been very effective and very active. And I think I don't think there are many examples in the world where you have such good network, committed people. What we have in India is, I think, is thanks to the NGOs.
Yeah, sorry about that, sir. So yes, so I think
Sir, please unmute yourself.
Sorry.
Thanks, Arshad. Sorry, sir. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying that some of the biggest success stories, if you look at it, from NGOs are like, not many people know, is Pygmy Hog conservation, which they have done, the vulture breeding centers they have done. So there are several examples which we can go on, but I will not take the time.
Yeah, no, sure, sir. I mean, we've actually, it's interesting to get a take from an insider's perspective for us. But now, actually, moving on to a little bit about, it's Global Tiger Day, so we'll probably talk a little bit about that animal now. Yeah. So most of the people, want to visit the forest just to get a glimpse of that animal. So you've spent such extensive time in the bush, in the research and while you were observing them. So did you come across any characteristics, or probably any individual tigers that defied the regular tiger characteristics, or that was a behavior that was untold or unheard of? I mean, most of it that you brought to us was unheard of for us, but for you as a researcher or as somebody who's studying these animals, did you come across situations where, oh my God, I hadn't seen this, or I didn't expect this, something like that? I mean, any experiences that you could have, or any photos, anything? I mean, it's just a question about their behavior or something that is odd.
One of the things which I learned, that I can never be an expert on tigers because they will prove you wrong every time. So, and one of the things which I noticed, or which really was impressed me, was that how different the individual tigers are. Then, because we generally talk tigers prefer this, tiger, but the individual, they are like you and me, in terms of how will they react to situations, how will see the human differently, how will they. So they were very individual. So we can't just make one remark that tiger will do this. They are all individual. So if you know an individual, then you may be certain. You can be an expert on an individual, but you can't be expert on this population of tiger. That's something I learned, and I think it was quite amazing how different individuals were.
So I think this is something worth noting, that everybody probably who has visited the bush with a camera and clicked a few pictures of a tiger nowadays on social media is a tiger expert. So something like this coming from you actually is an eye opener, that you rightly put it. It's individuals that you can probably observe, but not a species overall. But sir, overall, in terms of from a visitor perspective, so what do you think should be the role of a visitor, a wildlife enthusiast, or photographers for that matter, when they visit these tiger parks? Do you think there needs to be, a greater focus on, tiger films that actually focus on critical issues rather than the rousy picture of the magnificence of the tiger and the way it walks and the way it hunts? I think that has been shown quite a lot of times. So do you think there needs to be, more critical films, so to say, or critical approaches to be taken in terms of showing the reality?
Yeah, no, I sometimes think they've gone like the Bollywood or Hollywood film, the sex and violence, the predation and the mating. Every film will look into that. So I think that's something, but it can be sensitive. But the thing is that when a visitor going to tiger reserve, he definitely wants to go and see tiger. If I want to go and once in a lifetime journey to see whales, if somebody shows me dolphin, I will not be happy. Yeah. So when somebody going to come to see tigers, I think I'm very happy that they're coming to see tigers. But the thing is, but I will be very responsible what I will do when I visit, because it has an impact, an unseen impact. And over the years, it can happen. See, if there are a female with 3 cubs, and if you are surrounded by and watching, they are used to. They get 1 day, 2 day, 3 day. For 2 years, they will be seeing every day, morning and evening, 30 cars watching them, noises, noises happening, movements happening, somebody getting up, somebody getting down. You don't see there's an impact on it. But what happens when this cub disperses and goes into a village? And there the people see it and get scared. They make noises to shoo it away. He is used to it. He doesn't see a threat then and get into a conflict. So, so we have to be very responsibly, we have to be quiet, discreet. When we see an animal, we have to respect. We gone to the wild. We have to respect the wild. And I think that's something we Indians are not very good at it. So we must be little more careful about it when we go out in the park and in the wilderness areas.
Right, sir. Right. So I know. I mean, because just a leading question onto that, like you rightly said. So there have been so many cases. I mean, tigers have been forced to do it, or call it the fate of those tigers, or call it our encroachment. But there have been so many instances where tigers have thrived so closely with human settlements and so close to people. So in such scenarios, do you think there should be a psychological change overall in people, that they just have to tolerate the presence of these animals around you? I mean, so much so you have encouraged them. So you just have to be okay with the fact that there is a big cat roaming around you.
See why this happens. So if you see where it is not happening, where people are quite happy having tigers and leopards around them, because the tiger and leopards have survived throughout. So they had developed the culturally lifestyle things, which is in a way that minimize conflict with tigers. So I remember once we were doing a survey, we met some old people and we were talking to them. Have you seen tigers? And they were like 60, 70 years old and they have never seen tiger in their life. One or two of them. And so I said, why? There are tigers all over around you. I had radio collar tigers. And he said, if we know where tigers on this side, why would we go there? Why would we take our goat there? Why would we take our buffalo there? We will avoid going there if we come to know somebody has seen it. But imagine if tiger comes somewhere near Pune, the whole half of the Pune will end up there. Or maybe not in Pune, but somewhere in Dang's area, maybe 100 kilometers from Pune, turn up, then, So the things have changed. Because what they have, there are areas, people are living in the wild where tigers have disappeared for 30, 40 years. People have changed their lifestyle, people live. And now tiger comes, all of a sudden they have to change again. They will, and everybody don't like changing. So they will not be able to walk in the evening. They can't go in the morning outside, which they used to do. And the kids will not be allowed outside because they will be scared. So people will be a little afraid. But now, if that population, if we want them to live with tigers, we can't make the same old cultural thing. We need to find contemporary solutions for those, and that's very important for us.
Yeah, so wonderfully put in, sir. Actually, yeah, that makes more sense. So eventually, I'll probably move on to probably the last question, and I think I can have another question go to, but I'll leave it up to Anuj and the team if at all we have time or we have to open the floor. But the last question before that is, so India, sir, very pleasingly holds the baton for tiger conservation. So we are probably one of the leading countries where the tiger population still is on a high number as compared to the world. So what could you shed some light on the other countries where tigers are surviving, or what is the plight of tigers there, or if at all there is any hope of tiger population increasing elsewhere as well?
Yeah, no. See, India may have the numbers because India's size is big. But if you look at some of the countries, they've been very successful, much more successful than in India. And India can learn quite a lot from them. Bangladesh is one of them. Bhutan is another one. Nepal community projects are some fantastic. They have this community sense in the population and they work quite there. So there is quite a lot we can learn. There is few things which we can learn from Russia and the Siberian. So I think somehow because they are small, they have only 300, 400 tigers. People don't give credit to them, but what they have achieved, Bangladesh, especially in Bhutan, is quite significant and marvelous. Actually, Bhutan is way ahead of. I think it's ahead in terms of the conservation program than India is. So there's quite a lot of lessons to learn from Bhutan.
Okay, yeah, great, sir. So Harshada, do you think we can continue for a bit, or do you think we should probably take some questions now?
So it's already 7:50 and there are certain questions coming up in the inbox.
Perfect.
So,
I think we should have questions now, I think.
Yes. Okay.
And also, Nachiket, it would be good if you read out the questions to sir in the inbox.
Sure.
So that would be.
I will do that. Let me just, exit this view and go to the inbox view so that I will.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so I would start with. Yeah, I'm able to see the questions now. So I would probably. So greetings. So one of the question is, sir, that if there is anything, I mean, that you could visually. So today's age is visual age, sir. So if there is any pictures or any slides or anything that you have from your own personal experience where we could relive that experience with you, if at all that you could share, that is one of the question. if easily possible, I mean.
Okay. Let me see if I can retrieve something. But in the meantime, you can ask me
Okay,
other
okay,
questions and we can.
okay, okay. So there's actually a pretty big question, so I will have to go through it, but it more or less talks about the fact that, so when we talk about wildlife or tigers, we can't just look at them in isolation. It has to be a collective package. The country, government, entrepreneur, etc., all want tourism earnings from wildlife, but people don't want to invest in critical such as cleanliness, discipline. Most of these days, environment, save water, etc., have shrunk to just slogans. Some time ago, you must have heard about a weird order of culling nilgais. So why is this approach so myopic is one of the questions. So do you think uh, that we are only doing everything on paper and not enough is done on the ground probably?
Uh, it's uh, it's true in many places, but there are also some people who are trying hard to um, do whatever they believe in themselves and committed to environment. But I would agree with them that it is sadly we want to be green. They paint it green and think that they become green. But I think we need to educate them. Unfortunately, so far, so if you look at air pollution in Delhi and Mumbai, somebody was calculated they spend 20,000 crore a year on lung ailment and treatment. And so far, out of 10, say 3 people are suffering. Nobody is bothered. But once 8 people are suffering, so far is their problem. Once it goes to 8 people, then when my children or me, I suffer, then I will post it. So, which is sad sentiment, but I think we need to change that. And that's why NGOs, people, groups, clubs becomes very significant because they can run a campaign and a movement, and that's very crucial. Individually, you can't go and tell somebody, but as a group, you can work and talk to them, and that's very significant.
Right. Another question, sir, and I think some of the questions are pertaining to that, which is we've got a pretty young audience as well today. So from an orientation perspective or from a career perspective, sir, is there any guidance that you could probably throw into this young lot, where how could they get involved in actually working for these animals? Because watching them on TV and saying that we have to save tigers and actually doing something about it are two different things. So anything that you could probably guide these guys about working.
It's a fantastic field to work, very satisfying field to work, and we don't have to see that we have to save tigers. If we can save tiger habitat, tiger will appear one day. So you need a commitment. Things will not happen in 2 days or 3 days time. It takes time, maybe 10 years, 15 years. So you need, if you're going there in this field, this is something you need to be in mind that success will not come easily. It takes time. And especially when you're young, we want the things to happen very quickly. So that's something in this field is that even you do research, data come very slowly. It takes time. You need to put in a lot of hard work. Hard work in a sense, it's people in town and urban area also put in a lot of hard work, and in the lab also they're hard work. But the physical labor work is quite hard. There, that's something. But it's good that it keeps you fit, and you drink clean air, drink clean water, clean air. So it's fantastic. It's not very high remunerative field, but it's very satisfactory field. But we need more people. There are a lot of people joining. When we started, it was very difficult to find people. Now we have to select. We have to say no to people. It is very sad. We need more people there. more projects, more work, more everything.
Right, right. More community work to be put in.
Yeah.
Yeah, correct, correct. Okay, so I think Harshada or Anuj, I think I am failing to see any more questions. If you have something that you can see which I am missing out on, I think there could be. Okay, here's one actually. Number of elephants. So no, it's actually a statement. It's not a question, so to say. So yeah, anything that you guys have, Harshada or Anuj, that I'm missing out on.
No, I guess there was only the last question, which again came about the career prospect of it.
Right,
But I
right.
guess Sir has already briefed us on that.
Correct, 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 correct. So I think in the interest of time, probably could we take up one more? So I have one or two more questions, but if we have time, otherwise we can
Yeah,
we can wrap it up.
we can go ahead with one more question if you have.
Okay, okay. So
Sir,
sir,
is
one
that okay with you?
sir, is that fine with you? We can have
Yeah,
have
yeah,
one more
please,
question.
please. Yeah, yeah, sure.
Okay. So, sir, one more question that kind of keeps coming up every now and then, and now I know we are speaking about tigers here, but another big cat that probably we have in our country is lion, and we still have that in a concentrated population in Gujarat. So there were a lot of talk going on about moving that particular moving lions into certain parts of Madhya Pradesh and sorry. So
Yeah.
do you think this particular shift could still because those were the times when these two cats probably might have existed in good numbers in our country, but now doing that with the shrinking number of forests and making that move, do you see a solution there as well? So if there are any other places where we could do that or without hampering the tiger conservation efforts that are in place?
See, the when we started thinking about a second home for lions, the idea was to create a discrete population, a separate, separate environment, so that you have a gene pool which is independent of what's happening in the original population, and it could be anywhere. So they went on looking first in Gujarat, in Rajasthan, and Madhya Pradesh, and then they selected Madhya Pradesh. But interstate politics kind of has not come together to make a final decision. But if we can find the urgency is that we should find a second home for tigers. And if Gujarat is not ready to, maybe the best thing is to find another place in Gujarat, but discrete population, separately and in different environment. So something that may be taken in priority, and later on, if things settle down and we agree, then maybe Madhya Pradesh it can come. But I think urgency should be that we, as soon as possible, establish a separate population. Even if Gujarat, I am not bothered, but a discrete population, so that it's a independent of what's happening in.
Right. No, agreed, sir. So yeah, I think this I feel like this should never end, but I think it has to. So I can ask probably Harshada to probably take over and conclude it.
Thank you so much for joining in. And sir, I guess it's already 8 o'clock. So if you would like to tell us anything more than the questions we asked or audience has asked, you can definitely go ahead.
No, I just enjoyed talking to you, and for Pune crowd, I've heard so much about Pune and so much actions happening. We used to say that actions happening either in South India, Bangalore, further south, or up in Northeast. Somewhere missing. Pune and Mumbai is somewhere in the middle. And I will always wanted to interact with the crowd. I have not met you, but maybe sometime in future when I come to Pune we can meet. But at least COVID has allowed us to speak.
Yes, sir, definitely. And as soon as COVID gets over, you definitely come to Pune. We will invite you and have you in person for your next talk. And also
Yeah, it will be a pleasure.
For us, it was like a dream come true that today evening, when we knew that you had different talks all over the day, and still you managed to give this valuable time for us. Thank you so much.
You're very
And for
welcome.
all the remaining audience, I am putting up the links to join various platforms of Nature Walk. And if you have any queries, anything to tell us, anything about your experiences, and also feedbacks, you can definitely email it to us or message us on Instagram, Facebook. And also, Nachiket, thank you so much, because even like sir is joining us straight from Panna, Nachiket is joining us straight from Bombay. So I guess Corona has that advantage that where you bring people from any part of the world together. And thank you so much, sir, giving us your time.
Yeah.
And we promise you that as soon as the lockdown and Corona gets over, we will have your program first in Pune when we resume our normal
Thank you very much.
lives.
Thank you,
Yes.
sir. It's been an absolute pleasure and an honor to speak to you, sir. And thank you, Nature Walk and the team to give me an opportunity. I come from an organization which is a territory, but we're all friends. When it comes to tigers, we're all together. We stand there together, and so I think it's glad for me to get a chance to talk to you. So thank you so much,
Yeah,
sir.
no, it was fun for talking, and I enjoyed being interviewed, because talking you sometime, 40 hours monologue can be very boring. It was very interesting. It was enjoyable for me.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, sir.
Hello, sir.